Legend. Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. So great to be with you. Really thrilled to be able to actually share the science of performance with you all today, but also the link between well-being and performance. And that's really critical. Our team at Vega Factor, who Lindsay is the CEO and co-founder of Vega Factor, wrote a best-selling book here, Primed to Perform. So put that one on your reading list. It's a must-read, or Spotify, Apple, whatever. A question we often ask in the work that we have around high performance is of executives. 3 key questions. What is performance? What drives performance? And what scales performance? So we've been doing this for the last 6 years, and we have a library of very varied responses, as you can imagine. So we would call this the game of impact. Let's experiment. When you next check in with an exec, senior leader, or a leader, ask them those 3 questions. What is performance? I'm guaranteeing you'll get a different response from everyone almost. What drives it? That's going to be crucial to today's conversation. And then what scales it and sustains it? Because that's the critical part in today's world, particularly with the layer of AI over the top. So I'm the co-founder of Sprouter. We're an ecosystem for everything people, performance, and culture. Our day is our play. We are solving complex organizational problems every day, and the big one, there's probably been 2 this year, but one of the big ones is high performance culture and sustaining that. The other one has been a layer around strategic workforce planning, but we're not here for that today. So as part of your experiment, you're going to ask those 3 questions, but I'm going to hand you over to Lindsay McGregor, the author of Primed to Perform, and Lizzie's going to share with you the role motivation plays in driving and enabling high performance cultures. Over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Marcus. Perfect. Hopefully you can see my screen and you can see me and hear me well. Yes?
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Great. So welcome, everybody. Good morning. It's so nice to see all of you. I'm going to start by asking a show of hands. How many of you have ever experienced a workday that felt like this? Show of hands? No? All right. One of our first questions when we look at organizations and how high performing are they, we ask people to diagnose what the day-to-day feels like. And often you'll hear from people, it feels like constant fire drills. Things are exploding. There's log jams, there's bottlenecks, and it feels like we have an organization full of superheroes. But then you ask a little bit deeper and people say, I wish we didn't need superheroes. If we had built our organization so that we were a little bit more organized, if we had the ability to be creative and adaptive, not just reactive, we would build such a powerful organization where people don't just survive, but they thrive. So this leads us to our first question for every organization to define their performance. And when you think about it, it really boils down to 2 things. The first is the tactical performance. Do they feel like they've got good, scalable ways of working? Are they organized? Are they process-oriented? Is what they're doing repeatable? At the personal level, do you have good checklists and project plans? At the organizational level, is everything feel like a repeatable process? But if one thing you want is the tactical, the other thing everybody wants is the adaptive. The ability to be creative, to be innovative, for people to take ownership over what they're doing, to experiment, to be courageous. You need both the tactical and the adaptive. But interestingly, they're opposites. If you start to scream and yell about everybody to be tactical, you start to lose the adaptive. And if you just focus on the adaptive, you start to lose the tactical. Now, when you have neither, it feels like you're at the bottom left, no tactical, no adaptive. You're reactive, you've got good superheroes, but it's chaotic. Now, if you have the adaptive as an organization, it starts to feel like each team is a nimble little speedboat that can move fast and be iterative, but at the same time, we feel fragmented. We're all rowing the boat in different directions. We're reinventing the wheel. We don't have the benefits of scale. And at that point, what an organization does is double down on the tactical and get super, super command and control. When the tactical performance makes you feel like we're all in the same boat, we're rowing in the same direction, we have a common goal, but without the adaptive, you can't innovate, you can't pivot, you only do the things that your boss commands you to do. Where we want to be as an organization is in the upper right, where you've got great tactical performance and great adaptive performance. And this is when people feel their best at work. This is when people say, I'm in an organization where we're all headed in the same direction. We have a common vision and mission. We have common ways of working that get rid of the waste and chaos and bureaucracy, but I'm still able to adapt. I'm still able to be creative. I'm still able to figure out what's truly going to matter to my customers in a way that's authentic to me. So when we think about organizations where people feel the greatest well-being and where they're experiencing the highest levels of performance, it's when they feel like this balance of tactical and adaptive is right. So I'm actually going to ask you to raise your hands for a minute. I'm going to ask you where you have spent most of your careers. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to ask you to raise a hand. What have you experienced the most? So number 1, if you've mostly been in reactive but chaotic, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you've mostly been in iterative but fragmented, please raise your hand. Number 2. If you've mostly been in number 3, command and control, please raise your hand. And if you've mostly been in 4, sustainably high performing, please raise your hand. All right, I saw quite a mix between 1, 2, and 3 across this room. This is one of the questions that I love. This picture is something I love bringing back to a team lunch or the first 15 minutes of a team meeting to just ask people, where do you think our team is? Where do you think our organization is? Especially as you're going through change or a merger or acquisition or any big event in your company's life. It's where are we today? Where are you worried our leadership is trying to drive us? And how do we get to that upper right? So if that's the first question is really that to get to the highest levels of performance and well-being, we need to have both tactical and adaptive performance. The next question is what drives it? What's going to get us there? And it all comes down to something that was set up so beautifully at the beginning of today in that video. It's that why we work determines how we work. Your reason for doing something is going to change how you do it. And what's fascinating to me is that while I intuitively believe this, it wasn't until I went through 50 years of psychological research and data and measured why people work in thousands of companies and tens of thousands of people around the world, the research that led to our book, that I realized that there's a spectrum of reasons why people do anything, the motive spectrum. And this completely changed how I lead myself, my teams, and build organizations. When people do something, they could be driven by the work or the activity itself, like the work seems interesting, or they could be driven by their identity and their values and beliefs. Like, I believe in this. Or something completely external might be forcing them to do this. And I'm going to combine these motives in the motive spectrum and go left to right. The first motive, when you're doing something simply because you enjoy it, is play. Think about when you feel in flow, when you're curious, when you're interested, when you're experimenting. The work is its own reward. This is play. And if you think about the hobbies people have, what they do for fun, photography, cooking, sports, they're often not easy. They do things that are challenging, where they have to experiment, grow, stretch, and they find that enjoyable. That's play. If we move a little to the right, we get to purpose. This is now when you're doing something because you really believe in the impact of what you're doing. It aligns with your values. And then we get to potential. If purpose is what I'm doing immediately matters, potential is it matters in the long term. Like I'm taking this Excel course because it's really good for me to learn that skill to become a manager one day. It's a good stepping stone. These are the direct motives because they're in some way directly connected to the work itself. But we're next going to get to the indirect motives. And a show of hands, have any of you tried to get a loved one to do something using guilt? Anybody use guilt? I see a few honest people in the room. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is me when I tell my husband, If you really loved me, you would wake up at 5 a.m. with the 5-year-old, right? This is the motive of emotional pressure. When you're applying an external force, like I'm guilting my husband and saying, if you really loved me, right, appealing to his values, then you would do this for me. At work, this can be FOMO, peer pressure, anxiety, the concern about looking bad. This is why you can give a presentation perfectly in your own bathroom mirror, but you give it in front of your boss's boss, and suddenly you start making mistakes and fumbling. It's that fear that you're not good enough. It's that fear about how you're showing up, whether people are judging you, whether you're good enough. Next is economic pressure. And this is when you're working because you feel, or you're doing something because you feel forced to do it. Now, almost everybody needs to work because they need to pay the bills. But even if among people that need their paycheck, which is the vast majority of people, some people feel really forced by sticks and carrots. Like, I'm being manipulated into doing this because if I don't do this, I'm not going to hit my goal. I'm not going to get my bonus. Or if I don't do this, I'm going to get punished or yelled at or lose my job. You're starting to feel like sticks and carrots are driving your behavior. And last but not least is inertia. And this is when you've been doing something simply because you've always been doing it that way. Right? Why do we file our expense reports this way? I don't know. Why do we do our releases this way and have this QA process? I don't know. We've just always had it. Now, what's so interesting is that you can use any of these motives to get tactical performance. So if I yell and scream and shout, if I use these indirect motives, I will get people to follow the rules, follow the things that they have to do. They will follow the recipe, follow the checklist. But as soon as they're done with the must-do things, they completely check out. Turns out that play, purpose, and potential drive adaptive performance up, and emotional pressure, economic pressure, and inertia drive it down. When you're trying to get somebody to do something, to take ownership, to be creative, to care about the outcome, play, purpose, and potential are what drive that. And when you measure people in stressful situations, when you look at the doctors who burn out, the salespeople who stick in sales for the longest time, the athletes who are best at their sports, it's the folks that are burning out that often work the same number of hours as the people who are not, but they're feeling like they're doing it for play and purpose and potential. They're doing it because their work is set up to be interesting and they can see the difference that they're making. Now, of course, there truly is such a thing as too much work. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter how many hours you work, but somebody who works uh, because of the emotional pressure, the economic pressure and inertia, when their environment is filled with anxiety and fear and peer pressure, what they're experiencing becomes unbearable. We can boil these concepts down into a single concept called total motivation, or TOMO for short. When play and purpose and potential outweigh these indirect motives, you get much higher levels of well-being and performance than when your organization looks like this. And I used to think that there was a trade-off between well-being and performance. But when we go into organizations and we help them rebuild how they work to increase play and purpose and potential, within 3 to 6 months, we can prove the financial impact of this. For example, in the sales force in a financial institution, after just 6 months, the profitability of their group that was implementing this total motivation approach was double that of a control. Their net promoter score from their customers was significantly higher, and their cross-sales revenue was triple that of the control. So it was the highest performing initiative this bank had seen in over a decade. And it started because they wanted to work on well-being and motivation and ethics and values. And it turned into something that they worked on because it not only accomplished those things, but also produced better results for their customer and better financial returns for the organization. So if performance is about the tactical and adaptive, and driving it is about creating play and purpose and potential, not the other three, how do you do that? How do you do that at scale? Because I used to think it was just about being a nice person. If I was nice enough, everything would work out. But of course, as an organization grows beyond just a few people, It matters far more the systems that you put in place. The force of personality can only go so far. At first, we shape our systems, and thereafter, our systems shape us. The way that you're driving, the systems that run your company, from how you set strategy to how you budget to how you do performance reviews, influence behavior and motivation and that balance of adaptive and tactical performance significantly. So I'm going to share with you the system that makes the quickest, most impactful difference in building a great culture. And this is the flow from strategy to execution. So you think about what every leader has to do is figure out what's the strategy and how to execute it. And they need to execute faster, better, higher quality all the time. To do that really well, they have to start with a really good vision for their team. What are they trying to accomplish? What is going to be different 1 to 3 years from now? And the best leaders take that from a sort of vague statement to the point where every person feels like they own a really interesting, meaningful problem to solve. After they figure out the vision, then they have to explore how to achieve it. This is exploring, experimenting, innovating, researching. What are we going to do? Once they figured out what they're going to do to achieve that vision, they start to galvanize. How do we set up our systems, our people, our processes so that we can get this done? And finally, they start to achieve it or execute it. This is basically a learning loop, right? As you go through this first one on the left, visioning to exploring, you're figuring out what to do. And once you figure out what to do, then you start moving into the right, galvanizing and achieving, executing it, figuring out how to get it done. And leaders that can drive their teams and their organizations through this loop really quickly end up getting to that organization that has great tactical and great adaptive performance. Now, why is this so hard? As we break down what it takes to do this, it takes a lot to do this. It takes leaders figuring out not only how do they set that vision within their strategy, their goals, but also how to transparently problem solve and get customer feedback and ideate and experiment and craft roles and processes and meetings and create team norms and belonging and inclusivity and run dependable execution and apprentice and grow the skill of their people. This is a lot. And almost every single one of these things is new for a leader. And when you build leadership curriculum around these, it's incredible how much people grow in their ability to run their teams. But the problem is that doing these things well takes 85 days a quarter, and there's only 65 days in a quarter. Right? Doing these well is incredibly hard. And so, of course, our leaders are burning out. Of course, people don't feel supported enough by their leaders because their leaders are barely able to do this well. People and teams and leaders are struggling because this is an incredible amount to ask of somebody to do well. But fortunately, what we found is that for the first time in a very long time, there is a way to help leaders execute all of this. When generative AI came out, it's been scary for a lot of people, right? Is this going to take jobs? Is this going to transform industries? But what we found is that when AI augments a leader and augments a team in doing these things, it can be absolutely transformative in helping teams really get all of these things right, get rid of the busy work and unlock the play and purpose and potential of their work, because they're no longer doing the things that you would have to do as a good coach or chief of staff. So I'll share with you an example. So I'll share with you a case study from an ed tech company. This is an ed tech company that used to sell to schools and was shifting to selling to school districts. And Marie, their marketing leader, needed to align and accelerate the marketing org in this direction. Huge shift for her team, right? When the CEO says we're changing who we're selling to, now she has to figure out how does she evolve everything the marketing team is doing. And normally that change would take years to get right. So the first thing she did is think about how is she going to change the way that they do their goals and their priorities and their visioning. And she used AI to break down the organizational priorities into her own priorities. So here you can see factor the AI system, taking those priorities and breaking them down into how is she going to get data on superintendents? How is she going to change the content creation? How is she going to demonstrate value to each team? And each of these are a set of priorities and ideas for how to accomplish it. And it produced an incredible first draft of priorities and strategy in seconds for the team that the team could then edit and expand upon and make better and better and better. So that stress of, oh my goodness, what do we need to do? We're starting from a blank page, went away. Once the team had aligned on their priorities, the next thing they did was use AI to help create OKRs, objectives and key results, but make them motivating. Most of them are not motivating at all. But instead, when you think about how do you create really effective input and output OKRs, how do you make them about the customer? How do you make them about play? You can really transform the feeling of this whole process. Next, her team AI created project plans in minutes, not weeks. Then the team decided what are all of the processes that we're going to need to automate to make this more effective, and how do we do that really rapidly with AI? And next, and this is one of my favorite parts, is after the team had really, within just a day, redone their whole strategy from what are we prioritizing to what are our OKRs to what are our project plans. They used to do that in months with 300-page Google documents and huge PowerPoints. So they got that done in a day with AI. The next thing they did was use AI to help them identify, how are we feeling about this? Instead of a culture survey, what they did is they used AI to, in one meeting, measure how everybody is feeling about this new strategy. And AI asked, how do you feel about your next 3 months of work? Are you feeling like it's going to drive play and purpose and potential for you? Or are you worried? Are you stressed? Do you think you need more in order to be successful? Everybody was able to, in their own native language, conduct an interview with AI, where AI was asking them questions about how they're feeling and why and what might be driving that, and then instantly created for them a roadmap that said, okay, here's your report from that. Here's what everybody is saying about where they're finding play, purpose, potential. Here's how your battery is as an organization. Here's our hypotheses on what would fix that. And then in real time in that meeting, everybody was able to adapt the plan that AI created the first draft of, vote on what they really wanted to do, and come up with something really, really actionable. And at the end of the day, what they got was a dashboard across their whole organization of all of their priorities, the velocity of working towards it, the inclusivity of working on those critical initiatives, the motivation of every team, and what habit that team really wanted to work on to create a better workplace for them. So what we're seeing now that we used to take years to address for an organization is people seeing improvements just in 6 months in transparency, problem solving, clarity, experimentation, and productivity. A 33% productivity lift just from changing the way people run their work. So as we think about well-being at work, leaders are burning out and their teams are burning out because the way that we're doing things just doesn't inspire, right? The way we do OKRs, goal setting, prioritization, the way we have status update meetings and slow moving decisions, the way we have poor processes and routines and skills, the way that achieving feels more about approval processes and bureaucracy and chaos as opposed to real results. This is what's burning people out at work. And we found that there's an incredible opportunity now to change this. We found that it's quite simple, that you can build an AI native and people first organization. And often the first steps is first host a keynote or a leadership development series on what it means to have an AI native and human first organization. Second is to test replacing one meeting. Strategic prioritization or team effectiveness, just try one meeting differently. And you can test all of this in minutes. So here's where we've been today. We've talked about how performance is both the tactical and adaptive, that to get both, you've got to build a motivating environment, and that the fastest way to scale that is to create these learning loops in your organization and to automate them, to give your people the superpowers of AI without the stress and the pain of it. So with that, we'll turn it back to Marcus.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lindsay. I have actually questions for Lindsay, but we've run out of time. One big one would be, what would be Lindsay's top advice for HR leaders at this time? If you want to join us in the sharing circle, we'll answer that for you, okay? You'll probably have other questions as well. We've got a download, so the Science of Performance download. There should be a QR code that will come up in a second. Otherwise, I think you can see with the science, you think of a commercial organisation, having been in that function in the past as well from a marketing and sales perspective, high on economic pressure, high on emotional pressure, hence the reason I started Sprouter. Thanks everybody, looking forward to having great conversations with you. Enjoy the day, bye now.